Hi, listeners. This is lesson number 3 on the brain. So in lesson number 1, we talked about the primitive brain, which is back in the Oref. And lesson number 2, we talked about our emotional needs, which is derived from the limbic system, which is deep in the brain, sort of between the two ears. Now we're going to go up to the cortex. And our cortical functions are numerous. This is basically our maturity level. It's the ability to delay gratification, to be able to focus on task and not be distracted, to be able to distinguish between things that are really essential in life and little trivialities. If you notice little children, they don't have much cortical functioning. In the University of Maryland, they have done research on the cortex, and they found that the height of cortical functioning is at the age of 20, which means that the lower brain here has a huge head start. Our primitive brain, which is similar to all of our snake needs, our basic physical needs, very, very strong, already from the time of the mother's pregnant with the baby, and wants to attack people angrily when it doesn't get its needs met, or go for the food, or indulge in all kinds of addictions. Very, very strong head start. And then the limbic system, where we have our basic sense of self-worth and what makes us feel successful or loved or wanted. And going up to the limbic system then, if it's only at the age of 20, so just think how much of a head start the lower brain has. And this is why very often we get caught in all kinds of emotions and addictions, and even though we might want to overcome them, the lower brain is so powerful that it's really, really difficult. So how do we go up to the lower brain? We have to train ourselves to go up to the cortex and lessen the power of the lower brain. In fact, one of my students told me that she explained the brain to her children one Shabbos. She showed them a picture. And at some point, the 8-year-old brother was going wild, and the little girl said, "Ima, he's in his lower brain." And she's 3 years old, so you can imagine how powerful it is for children to understand that there's different parts of the brain that take over, that are powerful, and that we have to deal with. It's like an orchestra that we have to control. Now, interestingly enough, when Hashem told Avraham to leave his land, he told him to go through basically these 3 parts of the brain. Go out of your land, Artsacha, which is all the most physical needs. Go out of your Moledetcha, which is your programming from your childhood, the negative programming. And then he said even go out of Beit Avicha, which is sometimes we even have to go beyond our cortex and our rational brain and hook in to our spiritual centers. We have 7 different powers, spiritual powers, that help us to manage all these conflicts within ourselves. These are the power of chesed, of giving, the power of gevura, of self-restraint, the power of tiferet, which is emet, being able to say the truth and be compassionate to others, the power of netzach, to be determined and go for our goals, the power of hod, which is humility and awareness, the power of yesod, which is bonding and commitment to others, and the power of malchut, which is our sense of self-worth. So those are our 7 spiritual powers which help us deal with all that's going on in our brains. Now, each one of these parts has its own pleasure. There's the pleasure of food and the pleasure of being angry and spouting off and controlling others, let's say. That's from the primitive brain. There's the pleasure of being loved and honored, which is from our limbic system. There's the pleasure of knowledge, which comes from our cortex. These are all pleasures, and we need them. We shouldn't deny them. But what we want is to, as much as possible, have our source of pleasure